To those people who found out their parent had a second secret family, how did you discover the truth? What happened afterwards? I had a friend in high school who started dating this girl that had the same last name as him. Turns out she was his half sister and his dad was raising two families he kept secret from each other. This happened to my wife's grandmother. She's still alive, in her 90s, and her father had a secret second family. They met at his funeral. When the secret wife saw the life this man had built and lived with his public wife. But I didn't know that I was the someone else. This happened to my wife's friend. The father was a fireman and his two daughters lived down the block. It turns out he had a second family. Also with two daughters a few blocks away. The second woman knew he had a wife and kids. But they never told their daughters. The fireman did one of those safety talks in school and gave a hug to one of the daughters from the second family before he left. My wife's friend witnessed her father hugging a girl in another class and asked about it at dinner. Things went downhill from there. My cousin's dad, my uncle by marriage, had a secret family. He worked in Houston during the week and came home to the family in Harlingen. TX on the weekend. It was kind of always a family joke between my cousins and her siblings. You know. Like, wouldn't it be funny if dad actually had a secret family and that's why he's never here? Then they found out it was true. A wife and 3 kids. Just like my cousin. Very similar ages. The two families had almost identical lives. My uncle had been married the whole time to both my aunt and this other lady. Everyone thought it was some sick joke when they found out. But nope. Not a second family. But a secret job. We thought my mom was a secretary at a school district 25 miles away. Turns out she was working as a lumberjack. She often came home smelling of pine or fir, but we couldn't figure out why. Then I found her 48 inches chainsaw extension. Hidden in the attic of our garage. It was kind of a shock for us all. Not mine, but a friend from work told me this story. Her sister married this guy who turned out to be having about 3 affairs. When she gave birth to their first son, the guy's mistress also gave birth about 2 weeks after. The idiot decided to name both of his sons the same first name. They both shared his second name. So about 3 years later his wife goes to get the birth certificate for her son and the lady in the office gives her the one which belongs to the mistress's son. Which is how she found out about the whole situation. They're divorced now and it turned out he guy has 11 children with 5 different women. Kinda the opposite. My bio dad has, as far as I know, kept me a secret from the rest of his family for 23 years. Pretty sure I have 3 half siblings who are all 10-20 plus years older than me. It's kinda wild when I think about it, but I typically don't. How do you know? Have you ever asked your dad about it? Or what makes you think he has other kids? I think I may have improperly phrased my initial comment. My bio dad is a guy I haven't seen since I was 3 years old. I know he has 2 kids for sure. But think it might be 3. I put together a little family tree using online obituaries and directories, which has been super interesting. Social media hasn't been helpful as he is in the legal field and has his socials on lockdown. I'm fairly confident I was a byproduct of him cheating on his wife. Which is what complicates the entire situation. Well, my wife has recently found out she has at least 8 half siblings. Apparently another sibling did a 23andMe test and made her results public or something. One of the unknown half siblings had done the same. And voila. Not me, but my friend's mom had a DNA test done and the results said she had a ton of siblings and cousins, which is weird because she had 1 brother. Another adopted brother and no cousins. Turns out her mom was having trouble getting pregnant, so she went to see some really well-renowned specialist and then became pregnant. But all this doctor did was take some of the husband's sperm and mix it with his own and then they would get pregnant. So he fathered a ton of children. Many of whom probably still don't know. This is actually a great index for how the economy is doing. We all hear stories about all these guys who used to have a family in seconds. Secret family back in the 50s, 60s, 70s etc. But now you never about that kind of shit. These days, it's hard enough to afford one family on the average salary. Can you imagine trying to raise two? Found out my dad had a daughter after my parents divorced. I was an only child and it happened when I was 2. When I was 18, looking at his tax return for college financial aid, it showed a girl's name as a dependent. I never asked him about it until a few years back when she contacted me on Facebook asking if I was her brother. The dad of a friend of mine died when he was 14 years old. 2 families showed up at the funeral. Guy had 2 wives and 5 kids total. No one knew anything. It was a huge shock and it messed up everyone involved basically. Many years later, my friend is close and has a good relationship with his half siblings, but his mom and sisters never really got over it and pretend they don't exist. My dad was an abusive duck towards my little sister, my mom, and I growing up, and just made things very hard for us, but treated us with lots of trips to the mall and vacations to make up for the abuse. Then slowly the vacations stopped. Then the shopping sprees. And he would randomly come home late from work at weird times, but he has always had flexible hours so it wasn't too off. Then one day my mom got a weird feeling and followed him out when he said he was going to get a drink with friends, and found him with his fiancée and her kid at a restaurant. After that he basically abandoned us and left us homeless. But it just hurt a lot knowing how well he treated his fiancée compared to my mom and how much he respected the other woman. And he treated her kid better than us too emotionally, which was a huge duck you to all of us. Really ducked us all up for a while. I'm the second secret family. My dad was married and had 4 sons. He really wanted a daughter and his wife couldn't have any more kids. He met my mom at work and they started seeing each other, and they had me all while my dad was still married. The weird thing is he never really kept me secret. I've always known his now ex-wife, who I also call mom because half the time she was helping raise me. And I know all my siblings. None of us are very close, but I know who they are and I see them every once in a while. My dad and his ex-wife got divorced the same year my mom broke up with him. This was when I was 10. But my dad and stepmom, I'll call her, still live in the same house because my dad has some health issues. They were staying together for the kids, which just made everything worse. My mom hates my stepmom and dad and almost didn't come to a bunch of things when I was a senior in high school because they would both be there. My stepmom tries to be civil with my mom, but my mom refuses to be nice to her, even though she didn't do anything wrong. It really all just ducked up our family and no one is close to me or my parents. My brothers hate my dad more than I ever have. The whole wanting a daughter thing didn't work out too well for him considering we aren't close because he ducked everyone over in the process. Mom dragged us all along to come with her to some parking lot. A woman comes out of her parked car. What I later found out was my half sister. They talk for a while and my mom gives her gifts. She comes back into the car and we're all questioning her as to who that is, and all she gives us is "That's your sister." She wouldn't answer anything else, and the course over a few weeks it turns out I'm the youngest of 7, and aside from my older brother and sister I've lived with all my life, I have 2 older half sisters and 2 other older half brothers who have been kept secret for 24 years. This happened last year and I'm still recovering secrets she's kept from us. Not a secret family, as far as I know. But my dad got caught having multiple affairs with a few heroin addicts. Which is strange because we're a upper middle class suburban family. He would always be leaving for emergency work calls, bailing the women out of jail. My mom found a random diamond necklace and couldn't get into their bank account. He had spent over $20,000 on treatment for the other women, so he locked her out of it. My sister finally found text messages and so did my mother. One of the women was 3 years older than my sister and the other was my mom's age. The younger woman overdosed and died, but the other is still obsessed with my dad and has tried to come to our house. It's been a few years from the first time he was caught and they just now separated after being caught texting the same women multiple times. A lady I used to work with met her husband's wife at the funeral. It was pretty traumatic. She also found out shortly thereafter that he liked to look at pictures that should have gotten him arrested. She was never really the same. I found out my stepdad fathered a child when he was a teenager and his parents were originally supportive but eventually swept it under the rug because my stepdad didn't want to be a father. Apparently everyone in the family and town knew, just kept their mouth shut. I found out about all of this years and years later when my mom brought it up during an argument. Apparently the kid, who is now in his late 20s or early 30s, he's a few years older than me, has made several attempts to meet my stepdad, but my stepdad still wants nothing to do with him. We all kinda pretend it never happened and don't mention anyone named Jordan around him. When I was 14 I found out from both of my parents that I had a sister just 6 months younger than me. Apparently my dad had cheated on my mom when she was pregnant with me. But they were able to work things out. I was pissed off for a while that they lied to me. But I get it now. No one in my family met her or had a relationship with her until I was 18 and decided that she should fly out to visit us. I'm glad we did that. Because now we all have peace of mind. She comes out once a year to visit now. Not technically a secret family because he didn't spend time with her. But a secret kid. My husband mentioned that his dad was married once before he met his mom. And his first wife had a daughter while they were married, but he divorced her and claimed she wasn't his child. He was in the Air Force at the time. So I'm guessing maybe the timing was suspicious. My husband found out when he was in middle school because his ex-wife sent a graduation announcement for the daughter to him. So it seems like she wasn't under the same impression that the daughter wasn't his. I asked my husband for more information. But that was all he knew. His mom told him when he saw the announcement in the mail. But his siblings don't even know. His parents divorced when my husband was in college and now he has a third wife and basically never talks to my husband. Not quite the same. But at 25 years old, I found out last year that before getting with my mom, my dad was married to an elderly woman. He said he only married her because she was a multi-millionaire. He left her to be with my mom full time after she got pregnant. And they left the state. The old woman passed away. My parents got married. And we never got to see any of those sweet millions. Also, nobody really knows if the old woman passed before or after my parents got married. So, yeah, my parents' marriage might not actually be legitimate according to the law. Not really a secret family, but I found out my dad had a secret daughter. My mom and I knew her and thought she was just my cousin. Turns out my dad had an affair with his brother's wife. So she was kind of my sister and my cousin at the same time. She just showed up one day saying she came to visit and gave my dad a letter she had written. I never read it myself, but it was apparently very emotional, saying she hated knowing she was lying everyone. My mom didn't seem to be affected by it much. But my parents got divorced a year later. I think my uncle, who though she was his daughter the whole 19 years, took it the hardest. Growing up in Jamaica, it was kind of normal for a man to have a second family. I was probably 5 years only when I realized my mother, my sister and I were that second family. My father was always around, so it didn't feel like a secret or a shame. All my life I've known my dad's ex-wife. She accepted my sister and I. We called her Auntie Sylvia and she called us by our names. Loved us and kissed us goodbye whenever we left her house. This was normal. One day I left my backpack at her house and Auntie Sylvia called my mother to let her know. I was in the other room when my mother hung up and rushed to call her friends to gossip about the call. She was surprised how nice Auntie Sylvia was to her, knowing about her and his kids. I later asked my mother if she didn't like Auntie because she didn't think she was nice. She sat me down and explained that Auntie was really Dad's wife and that was that. Years later my dad and Auntie divorced and since then he's been married to my mother. This kind of always ducked me up, knowing my mother was the other woman. But knowing she got her man in the end. My father had a second family. When I was little kid my father was away a lot because he was in the military. He deployed and while deployed hooked up with another soldier and she got pregnant. Daddy came back and lived with mum after that like nothing was wrong, but he started to have to go away a lot for training and mum got suspicious and found out there was no training, he was just staying at her house. She knew about us and didn't care and thought it was okay. In fact, she tried to talk to my mum about sharing him. He dipped out after that and we never really saw him again. 20 years later, mum has a nice wife and live in the country and have a nice quiet life. This happened to one of my granddads. She was in 3rd or 4th grade and it was the first day of school. During roll call they called her name and she and another girl responded. It turned out they both had the same first and last name, different middle names. They became instant friends because of the shared names and started talking about their families. They then realized that their dad also shared the same first name and last name. Even middle name, and looked very similar as well. Once my aunt got home and told all this to her mom, all shit broke loose. It turns out that her father had been fathering children around the neighborhood and letting the women use his last name for the baby. I think it came out that he had like 20 children altogether. I did ancestry DNA and found a very close familial match to some guy I didn't know. After contacting him, I found out he's a twin. And they were both adopted, but I still couldn't figure out how we were related. Eventually I found the right records, marriage certs, and it turns out they are my mom's older half brothers, only 9 months older from her real bio dad. I don't think she even knew she had a different dad because it looks like Champ there did it again and bailed on my grandma before my mom was born. Just like he did with the twins. And pulled the same stunt a few more times. Confirms that my mom's side is even more ducked up than we already knew. And now I have 2 new uncles and a slew of cousins I didn't have for 35 years. This is sorta related to the question. I'm adopted and at age 19 I decided to look for my biological mother. I found her and reached out. Turns out I have 3 half brothers. We all have different dads. One brother is older than me, the other 2 are younger. She never told anyone in the family about me and just dropped off the face of the earth for 9 months until she had me and gave me up. I'm not sure why I was the only one not kept in the family. Everyone including myself was pretty shocked. I won the lottery out of all my siblings because I have the best parents and most opportunity. I'm glad I was given up, but the question of why never goes away. I asked about my bio dad and I'm 99% sure she doesn't even know who he is, so I stopped asking and I don't talk to her anymore. I do talk to my brothers pretty regularly along with my grandparents and aunts. So yay. I was the secret. My neighbor across the street. Actually, we moved together from Staten Island to NJ and bought houses across the street from each other because our dads were best friends. I used to play with the daughter every day and we practically grew up together and acted like cousins. Fast forward 7 years and my family moved to FL. Then we found out that the dad had a daughter with another woman. The little girl I grew up with ended up becoming a big sister best friend to the daughter her father secretly raised. Parents go divorced obviously when everything came out. But I see her on Instagram and she's always posting photos of her and her half sister she discovered when she was 12. She writes the nicest captions to "my soulmate is my sister," things like that. I think she was happy to get a sister. The other girl is just a dark-skinned replica of her too. It's adorable and it turned out okay in the end, except for my friend's mom, who never got over it. I don't blame her. Happened to my aunt. Somebody did the movie thing of put a basket on the front door and ring the bell. Well, inside the basket was a newborn and some heartfelt letter about how the mother could not raise the kid. They were a well-known Christian family in the town. At the time her husband had a seat in the town's parliament. So they raised the boy with their older kids, never telling him he's adopted. Until one day, about 17 years later, in a family lunch, one of the matriarchs, a great-aunt of mine that was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, casually says, "Oh, he's so handsome and resembles you," to his father, in every way. "Would you mind if I take a picture to show his mother?" Well, turns out the boy was actually my aunt's husband's son with another woman and he knew it all along. He's actually the one who instructed his bio mother on the basket thing. My dad was divorcing my mom to marry someone else. Divorce papers came to our house and we found out he was married to someone else while I was a kid, divorcing them a couple years after I was born. It was surprising. My father was married to my mom and was dating another woman. They were serious apparently. He told my mum he was taking us to the park once and took us to her parents' house for 3 days and she didn't know whether or not to file missing persons reports. So anyway, she finds out he's literally engaged and planning a second wedding with this lady he's been with for years. But when it all comes out in court, he's married to my mom, engaged to this lady, and dating 4 people. He only had my sister and I with my mom, as far as we know, but he stayed with the lady he was engaged to after all the court divorce sheet. They ended up getting married and have 2 sons now. So he kept his secret girlfriend and made a public family after it came to light. Then he ran for some position within his company and posted a write-up someone had done about his life and his parents immigrating from Britain and growing up in private school, and now his lovely family complete with a loving wife and 2 boys. I see it has over 200 likes. Presumably from people within the company who support him. And over 300 comments all saying they'll be voting for his position or whatever. I decide to let every one of these people who had previously liked and commented know, with a quick little comment that would notify them all. I simply said, why didn't you mention the 2 daughters and wife you abandoned to be with your mistress and have children with her? I got a lot of replies of disgust from people calling Emmy out. Like they didn't realize I wasn't some angry ex trying to air dirty laundry or make up rumors, but his 13-year-old daughter who genuinely wanted to know why his happy life story didn't include her. Growing up, our family lived next door to an old couple. They were so good to us 6 kids. The missus would have us come by early on Halloween to get special candy bags she prepared for us. The mister would entertain us by flipping his false teeth out to our horror and delight. He would give us quarters and we thought we were rich. Mrs. died soon after a fall that broke her pelvis. Mr. was on his deathbed talking to his son who had brought some photos by to ask who was in the pictures. Mr. said, "That's my wife," the son said. "No. Dad, that's not mom," Mr. said. "No. The picture is my first wife." The story is that Mr. had a wife and children in Ireland. The wife and kids died, and Mr. left Ireland behind. He lived a simple and honorable life in the US. As a groundskeeper. He married Mrs. and had a boy and girl. Before his son asked about the picture, he had never told anyone about his first wife and children. The son investigated and found that Mr. was telling the truth.